Welcome to our presentation of maximizing productivity, unlocking new levels of collaboration using Jira Service Management beyond IT. Basically, we're gonna show you how we used JSM for not IT stuff, and it was a pretty cool solution. So my name is Mike Hayes. I'm a principal architect, solution architect at Rivian. I've been working with Atlassian products for about 15 years. We're part of the digital workplace team, so we're responsible for employee experience. My favorite part about this job is when people's face lights up when they realize, yes, we can do that with Jira.
And I'm Mandy Sobel. I work on Mike's team, and I'm a senior solutions engineer with the team. I'm responsible for our feedback portal, and I'm also responsible for our external collaborator solution. I love working a good challenge with great partners. And thank you again for joining us today. We're going to spend the next half hour or so exploring who Rivian is and what forever means to us, what our goal and challenges were, the solutions we came up with, and the lessons we learned along the way. We're going to start with Rivian and forever. Rivian, we're an American electric vehicle manufacturer and an automotive technology company. We produce 3 vehicles, the R1S SUV, the R1T truck, and the EDV electric delivery van. In addition to these vehicles, we also produce charging stations as part of our Rivian Adventure Network that will span across US and Canada. And finally, we design and build the software that ties all of this together. And at Rivian, our mission is to keep the world adventurous forever. Rivian believes our mission starts with harnessing the human being's adventurous spirit, because the part of us that seeks to explore the world is the secret to making sure it remains a world worth exploring. At Rivian, adventure is baked into all that we do, but we believe that there's a more responsible way to do that. We believe that to create an environment that in 1,000 years from now is as livable today as it is today, is as livable as today, to build the kind of future our kids and our kids' kids deserve. Extraordinary steps must be taken. Sadly, on our current path, we are going to fully exhaust the planet's stored, accumulated carbon energy in just a few generations. If the planet is to sustain life and enchant future generations, we have to change now. And at Rivian, we want to shift consumer mindsets and inspire other companies fundamentally to change the way they operate forever. And we believe forever starts now. Let's talk about those goals and challenges. All right, we already know that our mission is to keep the world adventurous forever, and that we want to shift consumer mindsets and inspire other companies to fundamentally change the way they operate, right? Well, how do we do that? Well, as an EV company, we know if we improve the experience of owning and driving a Rivian vehicle, we can shift those mindsets. So improving the experience of owning a Rivian and driving a Rivian vehicle became that goal. In order to do that, we knew that we were going to experience some challenges. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. Challenge number 1. Building an electric vehicle is kind of complicated. Just getting our head around the environment of building it was a bit. I mean, we all agree that designing, building, manufacturing a car is hard, but an EV vehicle is even harder. Let's just consider the configuration of a truck. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of stationary parts for that matter, but let's just talk about the tire itself. I mean, it's just a tire, right? Like there's wheels and there's tires. And on the R1T truck specifically, there's a 20-inch and a 21-inch tire. But it's not just a tire, because there are a lot of different factors to be taken into consideration from both the driver's perspective as well as from Rivian as a company's perspective. As a driver, I may have an aesthetic preference on how the tires appear. Or I might live remotely and have a higher need for better charging performance from my tires because of that remote location. And as a company, how do we approach having all of our teams, design, engineering, software, manufacturing, delivery, all of those teams collaborating together to deliver on this tire? This brings us to our challenge number 2, understanding the Rivian driving experience. We understood that in order to reach that goal, to improve the experience of owning and driving a Rivian, we really needed to fully understand what that experience is. So we needed to find a way to capture feedback and true experience of owning and driving it, and real feedback is how we were going to gain that insight. Feedback is important to us because it does keep us connected with the drivers and all those individual experiences that they're having. We're able to gain valuable details that are going to drive our design, technology, and universally improve the end result for everyone. But how do we do that? This brings us to our solution. What if we gave our internal drivers a simple way to provide feedback about the Rivian driving experience, and then got that feedback to the right team? Sounds simple, right? I mean, we've all been there. You have this really straightforward idea. You think it's going to be pretty simple to approach, but the reality is it's difficult, and it was really difficult for us. Because in all honesty, things were kind of a mess. We were a growing company. We had folks coming in with all their own preferences on tools and processes, and things were happening in silos, really leaving with us with a mess of all of these tools and options to try to work our way through. And in addition, we had an existing company-wide usage of ServiceNow that was already really well established. This was also impacted by the fact that we had all of these different departments across Rivian that might be involved. And this is just a little small snapshot of the many departments that could be involved, that were all working in silos. There was all these different forms of containment, spreadsheets, emails, sticky notes, just everywhere. And really, it was a lot of manual work, and collaboration was becoming a challenge. This was not working.
So before we dive deep into the solution, we're going to talk about what feedback is, just to be clear, and what it isn't. It's important to note that this is not related to any sort of formal vehicle validation that usually validates standards, performance, reliability, and quality. It's opinions, observations, perceived problems, and suggestions based on a driver's experience. And this is not Rivian customers. This is internal to Rivian. For a feedback process to be successful, we need a variety of users who are engaged. We need a scalable architecture, and this process has to be simple, straightforward to all the parties involved. And the feedback at the end of the day has to be actionable. If we look at the architecture, right, we want feedback that is consistent, actionable, and flexible. And we have a variety of tools, apps, and features available in the Atlassian suite to map against our feedback criteria. So you'll notice we have Jira software, Jira work management, Confluence, and more, but at the heart of it is Jira Service Management. So we figured out the architecture, great. Now we just need to nail that process. So how do we take those tools and make an effective process? There's 3 critical steps: collect, triage, and action. Let's take a closer look at the collect step. This is where most of the users interact with the process. So during this step, we have a few different types of people who might submit feedback. We have third-party testers. Those are companies that specialize in putting a lot of miles on a vehicle and really pushing it to their limit. We have Rivian teams. They interact with the vehicles on a day-to-day basis all the time. They can submit feedback. And employee owners. So they have a great perspective because they own a Rivian and they work at Rivian. So their feedback's very important. So let's take a closer look at an employee owner. So we have Ava. She's a graphic designer on the mobile team, and she's had her R1S for about a month. Her family's visiting, and they wanted to take a nice drive along the beach. It was a hot day. So they're driving along, and her brother, sitting in the second row behind her, thinks, man, this would be really cool if my seats had a cooling feature like the front seats. And Ava kind of rolls her eyes like he's always complaining, but that's actually a good idea. So after the drive, she gets to her device and starts to give some feedback. So now this is the fun part. She's in a portal, so you've gone past the entry part of the portal and clicked on the tile that says feedback, and you'll see that there's different types of feedback, but she picks provide employee-owned vehicle feedback, because that meets what she's trying to do. And then she's taken to this page. So let's look at some of the things that are on this. We use advanced forms to capture as much relevant information as possible. So we can use condition-based logic to guide the user through each step. And the other part that's great about forms is we can have one form and have different types of feedback. So we don't have to constantly update things if a question changes or they add something. Jira Service Management is the only form-based Atlassian solution that supports attachments and mobile. So attachments, extremely important. If you're gonna tell somebody your feedback, it helps to give pictures and that kind of thing. And a lot of our drivers are in the field. They might be at a test track in a remote location, don't have a laptop with them, but they want to submit their feedback. JSM is the answer. And this one's interesting, on behalf of, which comes with JSM. It didn't think we would need it, but there's a lot of use cases. One is, say, several people are driving the vehicle, taking turns, and they designate one person to sort of capture all the feedback. That way, they can focus on the driving. When the drive is over, that one person can submit the feedback on behalf of the whoever gave it. So she continues filling out the form. So it's scrolled up now. And these instructions, we want to reduce back and forth where someone submits feedback and then someone says, oh, that's more information. Okay, here's more. Oh, no, that's not enough. So we use forms to give very precise instructions. So if somebody makes a selection for option A, we give directions for option A. If they make for option B, and so on. Feedback category. So this is a very critical piece of information for this whole process. There are 3 types. Something seems wrong, it's just that. The driver perceived something is not as it should be. I have a suggestion. This is what Ava, right? Based on her brother's comment about wanting cooling seats. And then positive feedback. It's important to leave positive feedback and that it gets to the right team, because we also want to know what we're doing right, not just what the suggestions are or the problems. Assets, another thing with JSM. So assets come with JSM, but you use them throughout the whole ecosystem, work management, software, Confluence. And usually people think of assets like ITSM, laptops, monitors, but we leverage assets in a different way. We have asset schema with objects for vehicle parts, hardware. This was a complete game changer for us. So we enable asset objects throughout the ecosystem, and you can associate any issue with that asset or link it to a vehicle, for example, and then that saves a lot of issues with people having to fumble around with issue links, because those can get out of hand. So this was a really good breakthrough, I guess you could say. So again, she continues filling out the form, and you'll see common field values, right? So this is also very important. I'm sure you've all worked at places, or maybe where you work now, there's a field called department, and it has a capital D. and it's a single select list. And then there's probably another one called department with a lowercase d, and maybe one called departments, which is a text field for some reason. And you can't report on it, it's useless, right? So this requires sort of a collective holding hands with the admins of saying, we're not changing these fields unless, someone from high up tells us it should be. So this is strictly change control on this, because it's very important, because you'll see why it's important. And then rich formatting. We thought, oh no, Forms doesn't have rich formatting. The create screen now does. Is that going to be a problem? It's not. We have attachments, so this has been fine. People don't feel the need to have to use any rich formatting. So she submits the form, and on the left is what the whole thing looks like, right? That's just a standard confirmation, but we turned it into a thank you, right? And on the right here is just sort of easier to view it. So you can see that she has all the information. Okay, so now we need to route these issues. And so we're in Jira Service Management, and we want to get over into Jira Work Management. So we use an app called Elements Copy and Sync. So it takes the issue from Jira Service Management, puts it into Jira Work Management, where we can start the next critical step of triage. So this step serves one purpose: filter out the noise before it gets to the action teams. It's the heart of the process. So during triage, there's, again, different roles. We've got integration managers, quality engineers, design release engineers, and each of these roles serve as a touch point between product and engineering, or product and manufacturing, and the engineers. So this is a natural fit, sort of in the middle. Let's take a closer look. So we have Isabella, quality engineer. She serves as the gatekeeper for the work coming into her team's backlog. And so she's got an issue assigned to her. She goes and looks at it. So this is her view, right? So this is Jira Work Management now. And you'll see feedback category, right? We talked about that. This one is something seems wrong. Remember, Ava had, I have a suggestion. So we look at severity and department. If you have a suggestion, it doesn't make sense to ask severity, right? So why would you ask the person that? So in this case, severity has a value because the feedback category is something seems wrong. And then department, again, one of those standard fields we talked about. Now, here's something interesting we learned. If you ask somebody what the severity of the thing that they experienced was and the department it belongs to, and there's 100+ departments, they're probably not going to get it right. So what we do is from the user's point of view, it's department and severity, but from the triage person's point of view, it's recommended department and perceived severity. So that allows the person to feel like they got to be heard on what they think the severity is, but we can really turn it into what it actually is. So she corrects some of the values. She changes the department, changes the severity. And then the most important one, software version, right? So if you have feedback and it has to do with software and you don't have the right software version, it's useless. We first started just ask the user, what software version, right? It's pretty straightforward. But let's say they drove the vehicle on Monday, didn't get around to entering the feedback till Friday. The vehicle's now in a different location, been driven a bunch of times, has a new software version on it. They're just gonna guess. And then when they guess, it's inaccurate. Then when it gets to the software team, they get upset because they're chasing down things that may have already been fixed, or we have uncovered things on a different software version. So what we do is we don't ask them that. We take the asset, the VIN that they entered, and the date and time. We have an automation that asks the vehicle, what software did you have at this date and time? And it pulls the versions from the software team's versions. So it populates that list. And so now when the issue comes in, they know that that was the software at the time. That was just a huge game changer. We don't have to ask them the software question, and it's accurate. Okay, so that was one issue. Great. But anyone who triages stuff, you're going to have dozens or hundreds of issues that come in, and it's part of your job to get through them. So Isabella is going to, usually in JSM you're going to use queues, right? But she wants to use her favorite app, JXL Sheets. So what's great about this is she can have those hundreds of issues and do things just like Excel, sort them, group them, have conditional formatting on the color they are. You can have save views, you can filter, and yes, the best feature, copy and paste. So this helps a lot. It really streamlines the triage process. All right, now we're in Jira Work Management, and we got to get it to the team that needs to take action on it. So elements copy and sync, we put it in the right one. Now it knows where to go because Isabella changed the department, which is one of the things. It assigns it to someone and puts it in the right team based on what she says the department is, because she has the say. And then the final step, action, right? So this is where something seems wrong. I have a suggestion, or positive feedback really comes into play here. Again, different people that take action. Software project manager, vehicle program manager, technical program manager for part of say the body exterior. And each of these people are close to the action that has to happen. So they will, let's take Amelia. She's a vehicle program manager, and she manages the resources on a development team, right? So if this comes to their team, it shows up on their backlog. They do all the backlog grooming stuff. They carve up the work in pieces if necessary, prioritize it, and assign resources and work on it, right? So let's talk about lessons learned.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's take a little look in the rearview mirror. Here we are, solution in place, and we have 16,500 pieces of feedback. So we got our goal of getting all that great feedback to work with. And we learned a lot along the way. Some of our key learnings were that, as you heard from Mike sharing, the common fields. So if you build a good solution, and if it's solid enough, standardize wherever possible with common fields, common workflows, wherever you can, so you can leverage those wherever needed, even if it is just the custom field. It can gain you a lot of collaboration. We also learned that although Rivian was already well invested using ServiceNow for internal service requests, we didn't need to limit ourselves. We still could utilize the tool set we wanted to use. We knew the Atlassian tool set was a better fit for what we were looking at doing here, and we didn't want to have to move the cheese for what was already in place. Those two environments could live together within the Rivian ecosystem. We also learned the intricacies of how all of the different Atlassian tools work together, and how we can really push those tools to their brink. We also learned quite a bit about the support that we could avail ourselves of with the Atlassian team, so they were a big part of that. Although building the feedback system helped produce all these great results, probably the most enjoyable part of it was working and collaborating with all the various teams, all the different departments and stakeholders, and learning what all the different components that go into building an EV. And in the end, we pretty much learned how to build a vehicle.
In conclusion here, if you're gonna take on this journey, there's some things you should know. Intake process is critical. You have to take time and iterate on it, because there's this give and take of how much you're gonna ask the person, which we all want all the information, but how much are they willing to give, right? So there's a point where they say, I'm just not gonna do the feedback because it's too much of a hassle. The other one is humans have to be involved in the triage process. It was easy to say, oh, we'll just automate it, right? They picked a department, whatever, and it goes, there's 16,000 things that come in. The AI is not working yet. Maybe with Atlassian intelligence, we can get that. But there has to be a person that takes it and does something that's either a duplicate or it gets routed to the right place. You need a human being. This was my favorite tip to learn. The first requirement was, can they submit more than one feedback at a time? And I said, yay, yes they can, we'll figure it out. And so we said, okay, how about 5 at a time? So that form we showed you, imagine 5 of those all in one big form with some are positive feedback, some are I have a suggestion, different departments, different severities. Don't do that, that is a mess. Just say 1 feedback per submission. It's fine, they'll get over it. And even now Forms has, I don't know if it has it on JSM, but that button that says create another. Trust me, just 1 per thing. It's even easier for them, they'll like it too. And then last tip is prepare for success. Like, we started this with one of the teams, and then word got out. Like, oh, what, they have this thing, that collects feedback. Well, we're a software team, we want more software-specific feedback, or we're a third-party vendor, or we're an engineering team. And so it grew really fast, these different types of feedback, but yet they're all the same. They all have a lot of the same things, so you can report, you can search, filter, all those things. And it's grown the visibility of Atlassian within Rivian and with the team. So it's, we almost have to kind of tell them to chill a little bit because everyone wants to keep utilizing this process. So I would prepare for success if you're gonna do this. And now we will open it up to questions. She has a mic back there if anyone does, and you can clap, I guess she's saying clap. Does anyone have questions?
Hi there, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. So my team, I run a JSM project for external clients. I have not gotten into Jira Work Management, but I'm curious, the clone statuses that you have there, what was the rationale and what was the motivation to move things out of JSM into Jira Work Management, back to JSM, you know what I mean? I'm
Yes.
just curious what the benefits were for that.
Everyone who works for Atlassian earmuffs right now. Licensing cost is one of them. So we have 3,000 people who might or potentially could receive one of these issues at the endpoint. That's a lot. I mean, they literally, at the time, JSM didn't have support 3,000 in cloud. So that's very expensive for this. So there should be a move through the API that should be available, which I believe they're working on. But yeah, it's basically we can't give, and it's also a different experience. If you're on a software team working on software and then you get this JSM ticket, it doesn't, so we just said move it over there and keep them in sync.